What's going on, Bulls Nation? Welcome into the CHGO Bulls podcast. Coming to you live from our studios here in West Loop, downtown Chicago. I'm Peck, Bulls _Peck. My guy, Will the Goat Gottlieb, Will _Gottlieb, perfectly coiffed. Throwing a bow in there. Our guy Big Day is off today. But no fear. There he is. There he is right there.
Always in our hearts.
And that cue is from our one and only pal and producer, Sarah Bear on the controls. What's up, Sarah?
Bulls win.
Bulls win? They won practice today. We could say that.
Someone won, I guess. they scrimmaged, so someone won and someone lost. I'm not sure who. But.
Yeah, exactly. It sounded like they spent pretty much all of today scrimmaging.
Yep. I guess, they're trying to ramp it up. They're trying to get themselves to a point where, and Billy said this a couple times, like he's been very impressed with the conditioning and the shape that everybody's come in with. They know they need to play faster. They understand it's going to be a little bit different this year without DeMar. And so they're trying to get after it in terms of conditioning. And it seems like with scrimmaging and with, the Miami minicamp and guys showing up early, it seems like they're on their way.
Yay! So there's your Bulls win, Sarah. It's crazy. So this is our Friday show, our last show of this week. We'll be off Saturday, Sunday. But then starting next week, we'll have a pod for you guys on Monday. And then Tuesday, Bulls basketball is back. This is our last week of shows where we will not have any actual Bulls basketball to talk about. We made it.
It's so crazy because
there's another victory.
It's so crazy because the offseason feels so long.
Yeah.
Especially when you're done in
When
April.
you're a Bulls fan and you're done mid-April, it is really long.
There's these things that get you to that get you through, right? You've got free agency, you've got the draft, you've got the lottery, all these things that kind of carry you, summer league. And then you've got this block for 2 months.
August, September.
And it's rough.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's never going to end.
Yeah.
And we make it work somehow, but it is finally over. October 8th, I want to say, or 5th?
October 8th.
Yeah, October 8th.
This coming Tuesday.
We're finally going to be back in action.
I love it. And shout out to everybody who tuned in to a lot of our shows and a lot of our content, even through those August and September months when there's not a whole lot going on in the NBA world, but we still are here. Because we want to chat with our fellow diehard Bulls fans out there. And to those who are starting to make their way back because training camp was this week and we've got preseason on deck, welcome back. We missed you. So today, lots to get to. We are going to talk about this Zach LaVine, Ben Simmons trade proposal that came from Chris Herring in an ESPN Plus column yesterday afternoon. I see from some of the comments already that some are saying, oh, gross, terrible, vomit, and some are saying, whatever, fine, just get the trade over with. Zach has no value. We will touch on that at the back end of today's show, but today was the fourth practice of Bulls training camp week, and we heard a lot from Lonzo Ball, which was great, and we heard Billy talk more at length about Lonzo and his role, so we will dive into all of that. But before we dive into Lonzo, just real quick, the other thing of note as we are monitoring not only Lonzo, but a couple other maybe or maybe not injured players that we heard about on Media Day. Josh Giddey, who has been non-contact at the beginning part of training camp, sounded like he participated in at least some of these scrimmage activities today.
Yeah, he did some of the full 5-on-5 contact yesterday and then a little bit more today, but it sounds like they're just kind of gradually bringing him along. Sounds like he will be ready. I don't know about preseason, full go. And Billy was talking about he's going to try to play some of the starters, maybe the first half. And, in the past, guys have asked to extend their minutes a little bit into the second half, but generally being conservative with them and letting the younger guys play. But it sounds like both he and Lonzo are trending towards attempting to play for opening night at the very latest.
Which is great. And Giddey did say that in Media Day when he kind of dropped that bombshell on us when we were not aware of that specific, ATFL rupture, a ligament in his ankle that he suffered while playing for Australia in the Olympics this summer. But he did make that comment about hey, if we were playing in a playoff series right now, I'd be out there playing. But because we have the time, of the tail end of the offseason and just kind of easing into training camp, why not be extra careful if we have the time to be extra careful?
Yeah, and he even it was kind of weird. Jalen Smith and Giddey both came over to do media yesterday from coming off of the massage tables. And so neither of them were wearing shoes, which was kind of funny just because, they're walking around on the court and the track around the court without
I respect
shoes on.
the bare feet life, obviously.
Naturally. And there's no swelling or anything in Giddey's ankle. It seems like they're just being kind of safe with it. But I think with everyone, Patrick, Giddey, Lonzo, the three guys that have been kind of on the injury report here early, they're just being as careful as possible because they don't want to overburden somebody and then have them miss the next 3 days of practice or, just put too much on their plate too quickly to where it could jeopardize games in the future. I think obviously they want to get guys out there getting reps together, but the important part is being ready for games. Indeed.
So good news on Giddey there. Glad to hear that he was a participant in some of these 5-on-5 scrimmages. Hopefully that means he can, we can at least see some action for him in their first preseason game this coming Tuesday. And I mean, has Billy mentioned anything yet in any of his media availability this week about what his plan is as far as who's going to play and how much in these preseason games out of the gate?
Just kind of what I mentioned before, he wants to get some of the veteran players, some of his heavy minute guys. My guess as far as top of the rotation is going to be Kobe, Giddey, Zach, Patrick, Vooch, Io, Jalen Smith are going to be the top 7. I would imagine those guys get pretty regular minutes in the first half and then either don't play or play a little bit in the third quarter and then out the rest of the third and fourth quarters for these first couple games, but then slowly ramping up. They've got 5.
Sorry, I just get triggered when I hear that phrase, Will.
They've got 5 preseason games. I think they're going to use that time to slowly get guys up to full game speed so that by the 23rd in New Orleans, guys are ready to go.
Love that. Now let's shift to Lonzo, because obviously Lonzo's comeback is the biggest news when you're talking about the Bulls and their overall health as a team in training camp and coming into this new season. Lonzo was made available to you guys after practice today, and he had a lot to say that was very encouraging. You were able to capture some of that conversation. Sarah, do you have that video that we can play of Lonzo right now? Please and thank you.
Obvious first question. How are you feeling?
Feeling good, a little tired, but it's good to be back out there getting up and down with the guys for sure.
When you say a little tired, that's just because you can't replicate this in your off-season workouts? Or?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the most high-intensity things I've had, just being out here with the guys. Obviously, training camp's a little extra, too. So really just blessed to be out here, man. I feel good, so that's all that matters.
What's been your communication like with the performance staff in terms of load and all that stuff?
I would say constant. A lot of data, a lot of stuff that got put on me, tracking-wise. But it's all, for the betterment of myself and the team. So that's all, you can ask for.
How much would you say you've been able to do versus not able to do so far?
I've been able to do everything pretty much. I'm just in for bits and pieces, though. We scrimmaged today, so I was in and out, but got up and down, like I said, got to fill it out, test it out, and it felt good.
So what's your confidence level in the league right now?
Very confident, but I'm still building it day by day. Just getting out there, playing 5-on-5 consistently is the main focus right now. Like I said, the last couple of days have been good.
Do you think about it at all while you're out there?
I try not to, but obviously, I am human, so sometimes I do feel it, and I just got to continue to keep trusting it.
You talked to media today just about kind of acknowledging the reality that your game might have to adjust or change a little bit due to the injury. How are you feeling that in training camp? Do you notice anything feeling a little bit different?
It's really just slight differences, to be honest. More physical things is like sliding on defense, getting over screens and stuff like that's a little bit slower, but just play the game a lot smarter. That's really what I have to focus on, and just keep using my IQ to be ahead of things.
Have you had a moment so far in training camp where you felt like, oh man, I feel like myself again?
I would say today's probably my best day. It's getting better each time. I think just the reps and playing with the new guys that we have is just helping me out a lot for sure.
Okay, so that was Bulls guard Lonzo Ball after today's practice wrapped up, courtesy of our Willie Goat Gottlieb. Everything that we heard from Lonzo there sounded very encouraging, Will. Your question about how much have you been able to do versus not do, he said, been able to do pretty much everything, like full participant, playing 5-on-5s. Darnell asked him, how confident are you feeling? He said, very confident. He said also that this, coming off of today's practice was about as, the best he's felt all week. what was your biggest takeaway from lots of things he said that all sounded positive?
I think the big thing with coming from both Lonzo and the team, Billy Arturis, when he was talking about him, is they're being as cautious and like conservative with him as possible. They understand how long he's been out. It will have been almost 1,000 days since he played in his last NBA game. If he makes it to start on the 23rd in New Orleans, they understand he's been through 3 procedures. They understand he's had a procedure that basically no one has ever come back from in any sport. And so they're taking it slow. They're, obviously there's some optimism there, and hearing Lonzo talk about feeling good and being able to like stack days together and come back from doing some 5-on-5 yesterday and being able to do that again today, like that's huge. So yeah. I think there's definitely like optimism and positivity coming, but they also, have talked about not overburdening him and making sure that he has a consistent role, even though there's going to be like some questions about how many minutes he can play, back-to-backs, things like that. So I think the Bulls are really taking the right approach with this, putting any extra pressure on him to like come out and perform. And I think that's one of the positives about the team being in the position that they are right now, is like anything you get from him is just gravy. Like you don't have to he's not like the difference between this team making the playoffs or not, right. This team is not in a position to really be competing at a high level. And so you're basically giving him extra runway to come back with lower stakes and be able to like try to get back to the player he was. And he knows that that's not going to be something that necessarily happens right away, if at all. Like the athleticism, the pop, the explosivity, the quickness, some of that stuff's not going to be back right away, and maybe it never gets back. But I think like his approach, and one of the other things that some other people have brought up and people are talking about is just like, he hasn't been around the team every single day. Over the last year or so, he's like come to watch a few games for a week or went to Nashville with the team in training camp. And it's just like, he's not able to participate in a lot of the activities that they're doing. He's like sitting by himself in the corner. And like Billy said this and Lonzo said this, like his confidence and his optimism and his like perseverance that he was going to come back from this never wavered. And so to go through all of that, regardless of whether he becomes Lonzo Ball from 2021 again, it's such an incredible story that he's even able to get to this point. So I think they are aware of that and don't want to ask too much of him, don't want to overburden him, but are obviously really excited for whatever they can get. Yeah.
You mentioned that it's not necessarily about like, hey, make or break the Bulls being a playoff team, whether they get, a Lonzo Ball close to the version that we saw before he got hurt 2.5 years ago, or a different version that he kind of talked about a little bit too in some of his answers today. But like, it's funny to think about like 2021 Lonzo. I mean, Bulls fans saw it in this way. I think there's a lot of other context around it, but like Lonzo Ball, at least on surface level, appeared to be the difference between the Bulls being a 1 seed and barely hang on to the 6th seed in like the last 2.5 months of the season.
Yeah, I think there was obviously like the team was hitting its stride and playing well and generating a ton of steals and getting out in transition. DeMar was playing great. Zach was playing great. Vooch was playing great. Everything was clicking. I think even at that time, and like one of the first things that I can remember hearing Billy talk about when we started and CHGO was on the beat was Billy saying, we're like, some of the stuff that we're seeing right now is like not sustainable in terms of shot making, in terms of like the way that defenses or that we're defending and like forcing teams into misses and generating steals and stuff. Like there was a lot there that I don't want to call it fluky, but I think they were just playing a little bit above their head. I think they were a great team, and I don't think they would have like completely fallen apart the way that they did with all the injuries that happened. But I think they were kind of aware that there were some things they needed to do and change that even if they got Lonzo back, they weren't going to get back to that level. And so what were the things that they needed to adjust in terms of their on the court identity? Lonzo made it a lot easier for that stuff to happen. But I mean, yeah, when you're looking at a team that was constructed in a certain way, you pull one of the pieces out who's like not even an all-star and the house of cards comes tumbling down. Like there's something more there.
There is. Eco being in the comments saying, everyone loves a good comeback story. #GoZoGo. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive more into what we heard from Lonzo Ball and also his coach, Billy Donovan, on his role this season for the Bulls.
At Empire, you get to shop at home convenience for the right products for your needs with quick and professional installation, and a low price guaranteed. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring. So, of course, they have copycats, but Empire cannot be beaten on quality, service, and speed. So their competitors advertise low-quality products that Empire simply would not carry. Empire cannot promise to have the lowest prices because anybody is promising those kind of low prices. Those are not the floors that they would be selling. So
Crap floor.
if you are looking for a new floor, one of the best ways to do it is through their virtual floor designer. It's a great way to see how new floors will look in your house. All you need to do is take a picture, and you'll instantly see how those new floors appear in your own space. Shopping for floors at big box stores can be frustrating. You might talk to someone today who was working in plumbing yesterday. Flooring is all Empire Today does. Floors, 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 no matter what. They live and breathe flooring, so you can be confident that you're getting honest and upfront advice. And they pride themselves on their convenient shop-at-home service. They will help customers shop for floors where they use their own floors. They can see exactly what those look like in their own homes, lighting with their own decor, so they can make an informed decision. They also service all their own warranties. So if you do have an issue, just call Empire. They service all the warranties themselves. You will not have to track down the manufacturer or the phone number or anything like that. So schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive $350 off. That's a lot of money. $350 off discount when you use promo code CHGO. You guessed it. Promo code CHGO. Restrictions apply. See empire.com/CHGO for details.
Goat ad reads. Love it. But no song.
No song.
588-2300. There.
Empire.
There we go.
Today.
Everyone, I'm sure that you just have luscious pipes that are just waiting to be set free.
Nobody in the comments needs to be hearing that from me.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Well, what if they hear them at the 100th annual Will They Go Gottlieb karaoke party?
That's a different thing.
Where we're all going to be drinking some icy cold Coors Lights. Between work, social media, and the choices life throws our way, stress about Lonzo Ball's knee, it's no wonder that we can get a little worked up sometimes. I certainly do. Coors Light celebrates rising above all of that noise and stress in our day-to-day life and choosing to have a chill mindset. Obviously, the karaoke party, that's something you could do positively. Can't rain out one of those. Maybe you need to turn a tough loss into an ice cold peace offering. You can do that with a Coors Light as well. Make the choice to choose chill, then reach for a Coors Light. It's mountain cold refreshment, y'all. And when the mountains turn blue on those bottles and cans, you know the beer inside is as cold as the Rockies and ready to drink. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smoother finish. Coors Light is mountain cold refreshment, crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies themselves. So make the most out of the times you choose chill and choose Coors Light. You can get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/CHGO basketball. That's CoorsLight.com/CHGO basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Cheers.
A Colorado.
A Colorado. Rockies. Oh, what a fool. Okay, so let's continue this Lonzo Ball conversation because we heard all these promising things about him when he spoke to the media after today's practice. But talking about the role and going back to what you were saying, like, it's not like this team needs to be banking on Lonzo to be the version of himself that he was before these series of injuries and surgeries, because it's not like necessarily we need Lonzo to be healthy so that we can make a playoff push, because I think realistically everyone knows that that's not what the focus of this season is. But if he is, in fact, healthy enough to play, what kind of player can he be and what can he do for the Bulls on the floor? And can he do a lot of those same things that you were just discussing about on the other side? And I thought it was interesting. I think it was Julia Poe of the Trib who asked him that question about, like, have you noticed any differences this week in training camp about what you said at Media Day of adjusting your game that will maybe not be as athletic and physical of a game as, you know, as it was pre-injuries? And he said slight differences. Some of the more physical things like sliding on defense, getting over screens, I've noticed is a little bit slower. And so I need to play the game a lot smarter. And that's really what I have to focus on. So leaning a bit more on his experience, his wealth of basketball IQ to maybe try and make up for some of the fact that he might not be as quick of a defender as the one that we saw before.
Well, right. And he said, like, basically right away, like, he was pretty gassed coming off some of those scrimmages. Like, you can't really replicate 5-on-5 basketball by yourself shooting in the gym or whatever it may be. So I think the, like, intensity and just, like, the conditioning is kind of there's a ways to go there. Obviously, the strengthening in his leg, that was another thing that he said, just in terms of like getting his shot right and making sure that he's got enough lift behind his jump shot, which was obviously such a dangerous part of his game. And to me, I said this to him, like one of the things that I thought made him such a special player was his ability to read the game a step or two ahead, to position himself defensively in a place where he could make a play by understanding what the offense was going to do a step ahead. And I think you could see that on the offensive end too, like finding guys before they got passing guys open, right? We talk about the difference between like finding the open man and passing a guy open. Lonzo was a guy that was like creating advantages just through his court vision.
Right.
And what does that all come down to? Obviously, you have elite athleticism there, elite length, the ability to like get tipaways and things like that. That's all just like fighting over screens, the physical stuff that he's talking about. But really, it's like the basketball IQ of understanding where to be and where to make those plays and how to do it. And that was something that I think made Lonzo so special. And so I asked him, like, having missed so much time, is like the speed of the game, has that caught up to you at all? And he was like, no, like I've been playing since I was 6. Like I still have the same IQ. I still see the game the same way. And I think that even if he's not able to be like, you don't think of him as like this explosive above the rim, dunking, running, jumping athlete, but like he was able to just get wherever he needed to be on the court and get himself back into plays on defense. Billy spent a ton of time talking about how critical both he and Caruso playing off of each other were defensively for those 40 some odd games. But I think as long as he's still got that basketball IQ, the shooting, the playmaking, the passing, all that stuff is going to be there. And I think he's still going to be a great connective piece, even if he's out there for, 5 minutes total this season. I think you're still going to see that just because of how brilliant and he's a basketball genius.
Right. Yeah. So he said he needed to lean on that, and Billy echoed those same kind of sentiments. Billy said today after practice, this was in your write-up, check it out, allchgo.com after the episode, that they pushed him further today and that Lonzo looked good moving around. It was encouraging. Billy said of Lonzo, I think timing-wise, he'll get back as he plays more 5-on-5, mentioning the conditioning that you were just talking about, Goat. He said he's still, in my opinion, incredibly effective because of his IQ. As he finds that rhythm and time, the way he plays, he's got a really, really good feel. But he said he was happy to see that Lonzo could play as much 5-on-5 as he did today and throughout this week. So, again, still clearly trying to get his legs back under him because this has been a long, long layoff. How many days, Goat? Nearly 1,000?
998 from January 14th, 2022 until October 23rd, 2024, when the Bulls open up the season in New Orleans.
That is a long time to not have the legs of someone who is in mid-NBA season form conditioning-wise.
Yeah. And I think he knows that, and that's why it's like refreshing to hear both Billy and Lonzo talk about like taking this thing slow. And Billy again brought up this concept of like, yeah, we want him to be out there and we want to see what he looks like, and we're gonna take in all this information that they're getting with these like wearables and things that he's got going on in terms of monitoring his workload and just the strain that's on his body. But Billy said, how can we create a role for him where there's some consistency there? And it's not just for this year, but he can continue on his career. And I think that is just really admirable from the Bulls' perspective. Like, he's an expiring contract. He is, as the Bulls change directions here and build a little bit younger, I think it would be strange if the Bulls were like really factoring him in as a big part of their future plans. And so to be thinking about it from that perspective of like, let's put this guy in the best position to succeed, I think that's just a nice sign from the Bulls and from Lonzo, who is clearly like thinking about taking it day by day, but also like, I think through this whole thing, like his love of basketball very much shines through, and just like the perseverance and persistence that he's had to fight through 3 separate surgeries. So I think thinking longer term and thinking bigger picture about this can kind of help them build a plan forward so that they can understand how to put him in a role where he can be successful this year, but also, put himself in a position to get another contract after this.
Right. And speaking of that, months behind in the comments said, get Lonzo healthy and let him play and then trade him, as far as like what comes next. And you were saying it's not exactly like the Bulls are envisioning Lonzo being a piece as part of their long-term plans beyond the season.
I don't think they're like saying there's no chance, but I think they've like, whereas last year or maybe 2 years ago, they like went into the season hoping that at some point he would get back.
Right.
Now I think they're kind of, they signed Josh Giddey, and in that tweet, Woj said
a replacement for Lonzo Ball.
For Lonzo Ball.
Exactly. So that being the case, and Big Dave has talked about that many times too. Like, hey, that's like best case scenario. Lonzo gets out there and plays, proves that he's healthy. Maybe he doesn't play back to backs, and maybe he's not playing 30 minutes a night. But a vet who's got a great mind for the game, a great skill set on both sides of the ball, on an expiring deal, who some playoff-bound team might see as a piece that they would love to add to their bench rotation down the stretch and into the playoffs. I think that is a feasible thing if he proves he's healthy. But when Billy is talking about finding consistency with Lonzo's role, as you were just mentioning, that makes me curious about the no back-to-backs thing. And less so minutes restriction, but if Billy is trying to find what works best for his rotation out of the gate this season, and Lonzo is a part of that, but not always a part of that because they're trying to be cautious with how much they're easing him back into this action, do you see that as a potential problem of a challenge to Billy and a challenge to the other players whose roles are fluctuating on a nightly basis, whether it's a night where, hey, Lonzo's got the green light, or it's a night where Lonzo has the red light?
Well, I think, and that's why they're going to be pretty conservative with it. Like, this doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be out there for 25, 30 minutes a night. Maybe he's playing for like one stint in each half, and it's like a 6 to 8 minute long stint, and that's it. And, I think the other thing is like, one, everybody in the world is rooting for him. Nobody in the world on this team, in the front office, any fan, anybody who's ever heard of the NBA is not rooting for Lonzo Ball to come back and play. So I don't think it would be problematic from that perspective. And then I also think like part of the reason why you keep some veterans around when you're doing sort of a soft rebuild the way the Bulls are right now is you want guys that can help make life easier for them. And Lonzo, with his passing and his vision and his defense, I think he can still help guys. The way he spaces the floor, creating more room on the court for guys to drive. I think if he's even out there at all, I don't think it's going to be a distraction. I think it'll be helpful, I think, even for a lot of the younger guys. And then to your point, I mean, maybe whether he is traded as, a player that can really help a team for a playoff run, or if it's just, the Bulls take this opportunity with a $20 million expiring contract to take in some longer term money. Let's say they get a guy, for similar money or $25 million a year. They can take in a little bit more over 2 or 3 years. Now you get a pick to do that. And now you're putting yourself in a better position as you rebuild this thing forward. So we'll talk about Ben Simmons and that trade idea, but I think it's a similar concept of like, the Nets having the ability to take in a bigger contract that runs longer, understanding their place in the world, and maybe they get a draft pick to do that. So I think the Bulls are right to keep an open mind about what the options are with Lonzo. And I don't think that they're going to like pigeonhole him into anything, whether that's big or small minutes.
Right.
But I think that, there is going to be an effort to try to help put him in a position to succeed, whether that's with this team, whether that's with another team, whether that's in big minutes, small minutes. I just think everybody wants the best for Lonzo.
Indeed. And speaking of, shout out to our guy, French Bulls TV, in the comments who said, Lonzo being able to play would be such a feel-good story. We need some on what might be a gloom season otherwise. I think that is very true. It will be largely a positive vibes kind of story to see. I mean, even like maybe they, throw him out there for a few minutes in their preseason game on Tuesday. And hopefully they do. Hopefully he's out there for their season opener on October 23rd. And I can't think of any reason why any Bulls fans out there would not be happy to see that, given everything he's been through.
Yeah, and I think there's a possibility that he's out there right away. It's also possible that he just doesn't play to start the season and they bring him along a little bit more slowly. Drew Stevens, our guy from the Bigs.
Shout out, Drew.
He tweeted that on Lonzo's podcast, Lonzo said, quote, "I'll probably be sitting a couple of them preseason games, but we're all focused on the 23rd in New Orleans." So I think they're just being as conservative and cautious as possible with him. And I think that's the right approach, given everything that we've known about this and what's happened so far.
I think so too. So all in all, great positive updates from Lonzo Ball after today's practice. Again, go read that column that Will put up earlier this afternoon, allchgo.com, to get all those quotes from Lonzo and Billy about Lonzo's progress with the team. One more quick break, then we'll come back and shift gears and talk about this crazy LaVine for Simmons trade idea that the ESPN world threw in our face yesterday. That's next. Today's show brought to you by Z-Biotics. We've got to tell you about this game-changing product that you can use before a night out with drinks. Let's face it, after a night of drinking, I don't bounce back the next day the way I used to, like I did when I was Sarah's youthful age. And I like to have myself a good time, especially on the weekends, especially in the summer. And so I had to make a choice. I could either have a great night or a great next day. That is until I found pre-alcohol. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists, the fanciest, smartest kind of scientist, to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Scientists like a night of fun too. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. If you keep hearing about pre-alcohol and wondering what it's actually like, now's the time to give it a try. Start believing in the hype. With the new GMO technology, they release different products that help address toxic byproducts of modern living in the gut. Go to zbiotics.com/CHGO Bulls to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use promo code CHGO Bulls at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will refund your money, no questions asked. zbiotics.com/CHGO Bulls. Check it out.
Guys, we have about 135 people in here watching us on a Friday evening at 6 p.m. We're talking about Lonzo Ball.
Love that.
And we appreciate every single one of you. If you are new to the channel or just finding us today, make sure you hit the like, make sure you subscribe. And if you are new, I want to tell you guys a little bit about what we do here at CHGO. So obviously, in addition to our show, which we do every single day, off-season included, draft, free agency, summer league, all of our coverage, we have that for every single Chicago sports team. So Bears, Sox, Cubs, Blackhawks, they've got a game tonight. So tune into those shows.
Surely do.
We've got
also do Red Stars, also do Chicago Fire, also do Chicago Sky.
Keep them coming.
Yeah.
And in addition,
just launched all Big Ten.
Yes, we do.
Shout out to JC.
We've also got the 85 with Cole Kmet.
Whew.
We've got Briggs and Brown.
Whew.
We're just killing it these days. And that's just the podcasting. We also have great writing from guys like Nicholas Moriano, Adam Hogue, Jay Zawoski, all of our guys who cover baseball. And myself, I just wrote this thing, as Sarah put in the comments there, about Lonzo today. I've got a story coming out tomorrow about Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips and whether they've got a chance to crack the rotation here. That is going to be behind our Die Hard paywall. So if you want to read that, if you want to get discounts to events like our tailgate this upcoming Sunday for the Bears game ahead of the Bears-Panthers, if you want to go to London, all that stuff with our Bears team, you can sign up to become a Die Hard and you can get discounted prices. I don't know if there are still tickets remaining for the London crew. Our guys are leaving on Monday in some cases.
We have tickets available to the events in London. We don't have
So
tickets
individual
available.
events they have planned, you can still get tickets.
Like the tailgate we have there, the boat cruise we have there.
To head to London.
We have some pub events happening there that you can still purchase tickets at truefantravel.com.
Truefantravel.com. Thank you, Sarah. But if you can't make it to that one, we're also going to Arizona for Bears Cardinals on November 3rd. That will also include a 3-night stay at a 4-star Phoenix hotel, tickets to the game, a Q&A with the Bears alumni, a tailgate, transportation, also at truefantravel.com. And we're going to have a bunch more events, whether it's watch parties, whether it's going to the Bulls games.
Takeovers. Bulls and Hawks.
We're going to have that
around
and
the
so
corner.
much more. So check out allchgo.com to find out more about becoming a diehard to join us here in this awesome endeavor we call CHGO.
What a diehard read that was. Will to go Gottlieb, everybody. Look at that.
Bulls win. No big Dave.
Bulls win.
I'm doing my best.
All right, guys. It's time to talk about this Simmons-LaVine trade stuff. Bulls fans and how they differ in opinions will never cease to entertain and amaze me. Codemeister, LaVine for Simmons. Heck yeah, Simmons is legit. Immediately next comment. Will23, Ben Simmons is garbage. There was another one earlier on. Woodage84, trading for Ben Simmons, who hasn't played since the NBA started, it seems. No thanks. Shortly following that, our guy Rob, Simmons is perfect. Only 1 year left on his deal. And yeah, he doesn't play. Cooper flag, here we come.
Correct.
Obviously, a lot of differing opinions on Zach LaVine and Ben Simmons from NBA fans and obviously Bulls fans specifically. So here we go. In case you missed it, it was on ESPN Plus. It was behind the ESPN paywall. This was from ESPN's NBA reporter Chris Herring that dropped yesterday. Chicago hasn't benefited much by having LaVine on the court. Last season, the Bulls outscored by 5.5 points per 100 with LaVine playing compared to being outscored by just 0.6 points when he sat. Between LaVine's health and his contract, it could be difficult for the Bulls to complete a trade. It's hard to identify a team that feels like a natural fit, but could the rebuilding Brooklyn Nets, who could potentially collect an asset or two, be willing to take on LaVine's contract? Would the Bulls be willing to take Ben Simmons' expiring contract off Brooklyn's hands in such a move? LaVine still produces when he's healthy, and if he can rehabilitate his value meaningfully, there might be additional upside for a rebuilding team such as Brooklyn. So look, I don't think this is the first time I've seen anyone throw out a LaVine for Simmons hypothetical. Obviously, the contracts line up pretty well. Ben Simmons, in this final year of his deal that he initially signed at, I think it was like 5 years, 177 with Philly before being traded, is making $40.3 million this season. I think Zach's making $43 million this season. Simmons will be an unrestricted free agent once we reach the offseason of 2025. And obviously with Simmons, we all know it's all about the injury history, and in a way that I think is more defining of his career right now than it is with Zach, even though Zach's coming off a season-ending foot surgery. Because Ben Simmons was an all-star for 3 straight seasons with the Sixers from 19, 20, and 21. And then in the 3 seasons since then, he has played collectively 57 games. 0 games, the season he sat out completely, 42 games, and then this past season playing just 15 with Brooklyn. I don't know if you've seen a lot of this like Ben Simmons hype stuff going around towards the tail end of the offseason, Will.
Always.
Seems like it's always there. Ben Simmons in a gym. Ben Simmons shooting basketballs somewhat accurately at a basketball hoop. Who knows? Who knows? But to me, it's not about trading for Ben Simmons, the basketball player. It's about, can the Bulls convince Brooklyn that they want Zach LaVine?
Yeah, and I do not think this is feasible for really, I guess, just mostly the Nets. Look, the Nets have just been sitting on the Simmons contract for the last couple of years, ever since they traded for it. He has barely played. I think he played in 6 games last year. And, you know, Zach obviously is a better player than Simmons, or you can at least project him to play, so that there's value in that. Mm-hmm. But, like, the Nets just traded Mikal Bridges for 5 first-round picks, including their own first-round pick back, so that they could tank this year. I don't think they're really in too much of a rush to get off of Ben Simmons' contract, especially because he's expiring. And so if you just think about it in terms of what the Nets want, like, why would they want to add talent right now to put themselves in a position to decrease the odds of getting the first overall pick? I don't think they would want to do that. And then on top of that, you look at their cap sheet long-term. Next year, they've got Nick Claxton, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, and a bunch of rookie scale deals. So that they go from $165 million in payroll to 73, which means they've got max money to go out and sign some free agents. If you flip Ben Simmons, an expiring deal, into Zach LaVine, who's on the books for this year and then 2 more, you're taking yourself off of the free agent market. So I don't really see any world where the Nets are interested in doing this unless they really feel like they could turn Zach into a player again and then flip him for additional assets, which maybe they do, and maybe that's something that they would want to consider. But to me, if I'm the Nets, I'm taking the expiring salary over, you know, a shot on Zach LaVine pretty much every day of the week. And that's not like a dig at Zach. I think it's just more along the lines of what the Nets are planning here. They are also going through a rebuild, but they're trying to flip it around as soon as possible. They got their own pick back, as I mentioned. If they get Cooper Flag in this draft, you've got a bunch of young players, you've got a foundation, and you've got max cap space. Like, that's the position that they're trying to put themselves in. And trading Ben Simmons for Zach, although they'd be getting a better player right now, it just kind of hurts their bigger picture vision.
I get the stuff about their cap sheet. I don't know if I buy as much that the Nets would be hesitant to do it because they're afraid that adding Zach LaVine and subtracting Ben Simmons to their current roster would significantly hurt their lottery chances. I mean, and that's no slight to Zach. I'm just saying, like, if this is a midseason trade, hypothetically, and they decide somewhere before February deadline that they want Zach, they're probably already a bottom, basement of the Eastern Conference team at that time. What are they going to make some incredible run in the back end of February and March and stack wins that they don't actually want because Zach LaVine comes to town and is playing like an all-NBA caliber player? I don't see that as being very likely. But
in that scenario, like if Zach is playing well enough to be traded for positive value, then it's probably not a rebuilding team that wants to get him in the first place. So
right.
To me, I agree with what you're saying that if this happens at the trade deadline, it's probably not moving the needle too much in either direction. But I don't know, trading in conference with another team that's tanking, like you don't want to give your competition for the bottom any additional edge that they need.
True. Yeah, no, that I agree with that. But I think, people have wide-ranging opinions about what a Zach LaVine trade could look like. And obviously lots of that could change depending on what we see Zach do on the floor through the first 20, 25 games of this season. Because the thing that Chris Herring mentioned and that plenty have mentioned is like, hey, if the Bulls are really eager to get off of Zach LaVine and his contract and shift all of their focus and attention to seeing what they have with some of these other younger players, maybe they would be willing to attach something to Zach LaVine.
Yeah.
It's why we were talking about before the Josh Giddey-Caruso trade, packaging Caruso and Zach LaVine together to maybe make that trade more amenable to the team that on the other side. But Cameron in the comments stating the obvious, but if we're trading Zach LaVine, we need picks and young players with straight upside as opposed to a injured veteran like Ben Simmons. But I don't think that's stating the obvious, because I think what most people have come to begrudgingly accept as the obvious right now is if the Bulls want to trade Zach LaVine right now, they have to attach assets to him, not pick and choose what assets they want for him.
Exactly. And they're not doing that. They are not doing that. They've probably had opportunities where they could have done that, attach multiple picks to get off of Zach this past summer, and didn't do it because they are a rebuilding team. A team in this position cannot do that. They cannot attach picks when you're trying to improve the value of your own picks. You have to accumulate more. Basically, when you're a rebuilding team, one of the things that you do is you take on bad contracts for draft picks. And so basically what the Bulls are doing with Zach is effectively keeping the bad asset and keeping their own draft pick.
Yeah.
And so attaching a pick, I think, to get off of Zach as a non-starter, not something the Bulls were ever really going to be interested in, even if like things had been different with keeping DeRozan or Caruso or whatever. I just don't think that that's like a responsible way to be treating this situation. And so credit to the Bulls for not doing that. But and I think that like the idea of another team wanting to get a pick for Zach, I think that makes sense. But I just don't see the Bulls like entertaining that.
Shout out to our guy Robert, who threw us a super chat saying, fellas, dropping in to show the best Bulls show in Chicago, the love it deserves. Off topic, love the idea of Modest and Pat on the court together. Appreciate you, Robert. Good to see you. Thanks for the super chat. And hell yeah, let me get some Modest and Pat on the floor together this season. But so circling back, look, Rob saying the Nets having Ben Simmons helps their lottery odds. Yeah, I mean, the other thing is, do we think Ben Simmons is going to be a guy that plays more than 15 games this season?
I think you have to treat that the same way you're treating
It's
Lonzo.
like season-ending back injury each of the last 2 years.
It's the same situation with Lonzo. I mean, Lonzo's obviously seen in a different light at this point because people are more optimistic about him for whatever reason. I just don't know that you can really bank on Simmons to produce at this point. And that would be fine in a situation like for the Bulls on the other side of this, to be able to turn Zach into expiring salary. That would be huge. Like that's kind of a dream scenario. And another reason why I don't think this is going to happen, because I just don't think the Nets are going to turn what should be considered an asset, an expiring contract, into a long-term deal that they can't get off of. So if the Bulls are able to pull this off, that would be huge, because that puts them in a position now where you're clearing a ton of space. You're off of Lonzo and Simmons next year. That's $60 million to be able to go out and do something else, bring in more money or whatever. And so that kind of flexibility would be huge for the Bulls.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the kind of deal that they should be looking at. And I'm sure the kinds of deals that they were looking at but nothing materialized. And so I think at this point in the offseason and as we hit the start of the season, like maybe a team gets super desperate, like Kawhi going down and not being able to play as the Clippers, who are a team that just like doesn't care about money. They're going into a new arena. You lose Paul George. Like, could they be a team that gets super desperate last second? Maybe. That's the kind of deal that I think is really the only scenario. Maybe a team like the Bucks, similar situation. Chris Middleton going through double ankle surgeries, not really able to be ready to go for the start of the season. Probably not going to be giving you much in terms of consistency, 30-minute plus performances on a nightly basis in Milwaukee for a team that really needs it. Those are the kind of teams that I think you could probably convince to take on a Zach LaVine. But then it becomes a question of, okay, well, how much money do you have to take back? Or do you have to involve a third team to offload some more salary? Or are you able to get anything for them? Because now you've got 3 years of Chris Middleton instead of 3 years of Zach LaVine. Is that really doing much for you? So those are the questions that I think are associated with it. But at this point, I just think it's going to be hard for the Bulls to get anything of value for Zach until he gets out in the court and plays. And he is trending towards doing that. He seemed like he was in a great headspace yesterday in practice when we talked to him. As we talked about before, like really respect and appreciate the way that he handled his media at media day and just like coming out there and saying like, yep, let's just move on with it. Let's keep on going and put the past in the past. And I'll let you know if you need to know anything. So I think the Bulls just kind of have to get him back out in the court and turn him back into as close to an asset as possible. The only way to do that is for him to be playing and healthy.
Yeah. I do think the Clippers could make sense at some point down the road this season as an in-season team to try and call.
But even then, I mean, I was looking at their, at the trade machine, shout out.
Goat's favorite thing.
My favorite thing. And it's like, how do you make the salaries work? Because they are over the cap. I don't think they're over the tax. They're not yet at the first apron. So they can aggregate still, but they can't take in more money than they're sending out. And so like it's either like Harden or Kawhi have to be included, which is obviously not going to happen. And then beyond that, it's like Norman Powell and PJ Tucker makes 30 and you've got to get to 43 for Zach. And now you're like stacking these contracts together. And how do you really make that work? And then the Bulls have to send guys back to match roster spots. So it's just a tricky thing to be trading these big contracts like Zach. And even at that point, like with the depth that you're sacrificing with the Clippers, yeah, maybe the star power is worth it. And that's valuable to you heading into the new arena and everything. Maybe that happens. But even if it does, like that's going to be a tricky one to pull off.
Yeah. And personally, you said Bucks and like my heart ached a little. Like, it would be tough to see Zach go to Milwaukee.
But also,
Central
like,
Division
I would
rival.
be thrilled for him to go to a team
where
he was like,
where he's asked to be a complimentary star.
Where he's the third best player and they're competing for a championship. Like,
yeah.
That's where I want to see Zach.
To see him succeed there, I'd be happy for him, but it would hurt. Like, dude, I hate that Bobby Portis like found himself a home in Milwaukee. Like, Bobby Portis won a championship with the Bucks. So happy for him, but like, ow, my Bulls fan heart.
Back to the Bulls in that trade.
Oh, don't tease me, goat.
Because Middleton's making like 36 and maybe even less than that, and you've got to get up to 43. It's a very difficult contract to trade.
When it comes to Simmons and
31,
this hypothetical, look, people have a lot of opinions about Ben Simmons as NBA fans. Will23 in the comments said Simmons couldn't get along with his teammates in Philadelphia or New Jersey. That's how I know you are an old head NBA fan, Will23, because you referred to them as the New Jersey Nets. They are in Brooklyn now, but in my brain, I still think of them as the New Jersey Nets. Jason Kidd, Kerry Kittles, Keith Van Horn, Richard Jefferson,
Vince Carter.
But like that is true. Like it's longer in the past now, but the Simmons holdout stuff was really ugly, and I think a lot of his teammates then, and then like remember like they started finding him, and then he finally came back to camp, and then there was that footage of him at their practice facility, and like the team was doing like a huddle and like all hands in, and he was just like off to the side, all pouty and weird. Like people talk about Zach LaVine being a disgruntled star right now. I guess you could draw a parallel to Ben Simmons, but I think that Simmons' resume as a disgruntled star who, sits out instead of buying in is much more aggressive than anything Zach LaVine has done to this point.
Well, and here's the difference. It's the same thing with Harden when he got basically moved to the Clippers last year. Like he was looking for the contract. Simmons was holding out so that he didn't get hurt playing on an expiring deal because he wanted the big payday. Zach has already been paid. So the difference here is with Simmons, the best thing for him was to sit out so that he could put pressure on the team to get the contract and then get moved. Zach's already got the contract. So what's best for him is to be on the court, prove that he can play, prove that he's still a productive member of society in the NBA, and hope that that encourages a team to come out and trade for him. So I don't think this is a situation where Zach is going to hold out. I don't think it makes any sense for him to. Maybe you get to a point down the road this season where the Bulls shut him down if they're not able to move him, and he doesn't really play too much after the deadline. That's different because that's like the Bulls putting themselves in a position to keep the pick. But I don't see a world where like Zach being pouty, Zach being unhappy helps him. And I think that's part of what happened last year. Like him being upset about the situation made him look bad. It didn't make a trade any easier. And so that's, I think, where you get this version of Zach LaVine coming back into camp where he's like, I'm going to go out and play. I'm going to play my role. I'm going to do what the team's asking me, because he knows that that's the best thing for him in order to eventually get moved.
Yeah. Matthew in the comments also pointing something out that I had thought of. I think also somebody in the comments mentioned it earlier. If you're not talking about a Simmons who is hurt or holding out or whatever, but actually plans to be out on the floor playing, Matthew in the comments said, I don't see it happening. The fit makes no sense. Simmons is totally redundant with Giddey. And like, I think that is fairly accurate when you think about what their skill sets are. Guys that need the ball to be effective, but the way they are effective with the ball is by finding good looks for their teammates, and guys who can't really shoot, like, you know,
Aussies.
Like, yeah, like there is that. But like,
here's the thing though.
Like if you're talking about like Simmons coming in and just finishing the last year of his deal because like, and like being in a Bulls jersey and playing because the Bulls see him as a player that they would want as like an upside to, yes, we also managed to get off of Zach's contract. I don't see the fit at all.
I don't think you're trading for him, the player. I think you're trading for him, the expiring salary.
Correct. Yeah.
So you're doing this to put yourself in a position to clear out some cap space for next year. And if you're able to like get off of Vooch, I think what the Bulls' plan should be is to get as many guys on 2-year deals as possible, because that lines up with Kobe and Io. And so if you have a bunch of money coming off the books right now, both of those guys are going to have relatively low cap holds. That's how you become a free agent player. If you have a bunch of money that comes off the books beforehand, you don't need to sign anybody, or maybe sign 1-year deals, whatever, but you need to basically put yourself in a position to have a bunch of room going into the 26-27 season, where you sign Kobe and Io, which you're allowed to do with bird rights and go over the cap to do that. And then you have to get below the cap far enough to be able to sign a max free agent. And now you've got, hopefully Cooper Flag, hopefully Io, Kobe, Giddey is playing well on a reasonable deal, Patrick, and then a max contract to go with it. That's the dream scenario. And so having Vooch coming off the books in 2 years, having, Zach with a player option or in that 3rd year, maybe you're able to trade him next year to get expiring money. Like the goal should be free agency in 2026, 27. And so to me, even like getting Simmons right now to clear out that space doesn't really do you much good, because you're still so far away. But I don't think that Simmons is like what you're after in this scenario. It's really about like getting off of that money and the flexibility that comes with it.
Yeah, I agree. That's why you do the trade, not because you want Ben Simmons, the player. Shout out to Trey Exel, who threw us a super chat. Appreciate you, Trey, saying, I see a scenario where the Bulls out-athlete other teams and overperform this season. I don't recall a team that had this many pure athletes on it. Well, for all of you out there in Bulls Nation looking for a dose of optimism, there you go. There's one compliments of our guy Trey with a super chat. But to loop that into the whole Zach LaVine thing, that is something that Zach LaVine can provide. Like, Zach LaVine is actually, as long as he is stuck here, a roster fit with what the Bulls are now trying to do, offensively speaking. With, there's a lot of hype and excitement about him and Giddey playing together. Lonzo might not be sprinting, but Lonzo's court vision with outlet passes to Zach, playing faster, up-tempo, Zach off the ball, getting looks on threes, making cuts. Like, that fits into this equation a hell of a lot more than an injured backy-atomy Ben Simmons does.
And, that's why, like, as much as we've talked about Zach helping himself in this situation, it's on the Bulls, and I think they are trying to deliver to help him look good too. Because, like, if you're putting Zach in a position to fail, it's not going to help his trade value. If you put him in a position where all he has to do is run up and down and shoot threes and get open layups, playing off of Josh Giddey, being in like a run and gun offense, like that's going to make him look good. That's going to give teams, okay, maybe there is a way that we could absorb Zach's contract because we know that he could look really good in our system playing the way that he's playing right now. And so I think by getting Giddey in here, by playing faster, having shooting around Giddey, having a little bit of rim protection there, and Jalen Smith, who can come in and be a contributor, like those are things that are going to help make Zach look a little bit better. And so he's got to buy into that, but the Bulls also have the responsibility of helping make him look better. And obviously it's not just about Zach. Like they're trying to do this to make all their young players look better. But I think that's kind of what they're trying to do here is put guys in a position to just play basketball, to shoot, to run, to get out in transition. That's going to make the game and life a lot easier on everybody. And I think that's where Zach starts to give other teams some more appeal.
Yeah. Rob in the comments saying Zach gives Kobe confidence. He said it since he was a rookie. Yeah, I do think that they have a strong relationship. And obviously we saw Kobe thrive at times when Zach was out and then all the way out last season. But we have seen them also have games where they play well on the floor together. Also, shout out to Rob, by the way. I just noticed he changed his YouTube avatar to our freshly released new design in that All-City merch store, our new Rose Forever design. That's right. That's a Bulls win, Big Dave. Available for pre-sale right now in both t-shirt and hoodie. We have reached October. It is starting to cool off finally a little bit. You need that hoodie. Grab yourself one at that All-City merch locker right now. Sign up to become a diehard and get that t-shirt for free if you want as your free shirt of your choice. If you are a diehard already, head to that merch store and use your 20% discount. Make sure you get that Rose Forever merch. Shout out to Rob. So, yeah, look, I think when you're talking about this Zach LaVine stuff, and again, I agree with you. Credit to what Zach said at Media Day. I respected and appreciated the fact that he said, I'm going to talk before y'all ask questions. And here we are talking about Zach LaVine trades because, like, look, I was having a laugh at the back of that, media area when Joe Cowley just would not let it go and kept needling, AK, because it's like, look, it's the elephant in the room that all Bulls fans are aware of. We're moving in this new direction, but Zach's still here. How does this proceed? Is there a way to find a trade for him in the middle of the season, and what's the best way to go about doing that?
It's just to make him look better. And ultimately, I don't think anybody's going to be like going after bad contracts, right? So it's on both him and the Bulls, as I said, to make Zach look like a better contract to where it's palatable for teams to go out and trade for him. I think the best way to do that is health, being out there and just playing easy, playing free. And I think that is going to be possible in this system. So by the trade deadline, I think there's a chance that he gets moved. I think obviously, as much as like AK is not going to come out and say it, that's kind of the goal here, is to be able to eventually fully move on. Like they haven't really been able to do that so far with Zach still on the team. But I also think there's a world where that just doesn't happen and you're not able to move Zach this year. And like the Bulls have to be aware of that situation as well. Yeah.
Bulls fans also have to be ready for that reality to play out. That is it for today. That is it for this week. Thank you everybody for tuning in all week long. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed our Media Day coverage at Media Day on Monday. That was a lot of fun. That was this week. It's been a long week.
Feels like it's been a month.
This dude is exhausted. He was at practices all this week, including on top of being on our show and doing all that great writing. AllCHGO.com, where you can find all of Will's great coverage of training camp stuff this week on a lot of different players and a lot from Billy Donovan, the head coach. We're off the weekend. We'll be back Monday, 5:30 Central with a live pod, and then Tuesday, it's preseason time, y'all. Will the Goat, Will_Gottlieb. Follow our guy, Big Dave Bow, BAWL Sports. He'll be back with us on Monday. Shout out and thanks to our pal and producer, Sarah, on the controls. She's still going to be working Blackhawks post-game tonight, so applause for the long day. I'm Bulls_Peck. We are CHGO_Bulls. Hit that like button on your way out if you haven't done it yet. Make sure you subscribe to CHGO Sports YouTube channel. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you Monday. See you, Rebby. Good.
We all silly like the mayor.